Bishop Paul Morton, respected by millions as a man of unwavering faith, wisdom, and strength, has long been seen as a pillar of the church. His voice rang through pulpits across the nation, his words offering love, hope, and healing. For decades, he was celebrated as a spiritual father, a leader who preached grace and forgiveness in the face of life's toughest challenges. His sermons touched souls, and his songs gave comfort to those in pain. But behind the applause, the admiration, and the carefully crafted image of the perfect leader, something far darker was unfolding. A story that looked flawless from the outside was slowly crumbling from within. For years, Bishop Morton and his wife, Dr. Deborah Morton, were seen as the ultimate power couple. Together, they preached unity and love, standing side by side in front of congregations, a picture of marital strength and spiritual harmony. To the world, they were the epitome of grace, untouchable, unbreakable. But what no one knew, and what Dr. Morton kept silent for decades, was the painful truth she quietly endured. Now, at 74 years old, Dr. Morton is stepping forward to reveal the shocking realities that have haunted their marriage for years, truths that will stun their followers, and even those closest to them. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. For years, whispers circulated, rumors about tension, control, and emotional distance between the couple, but these whispers were dismissed, ignored. After all, who could question the integrity of a man like Bishop Morton? He was revered, a giant in the faith, and Dr. Morton? She stood quietly by his side, supporting him in public, while in private, she bore a heavy burden that no one could see. What Dr. Morton has just revealed is nothing short of a revelation, and it's about to change everything we thought we knew about the Mortons. But she had a storm inside of her. She decided to keep quiet. Up until now, she has favored peace over the truth. And the truth is louder than ever now that she has finally spoken. Dr. Morton confessed in her tearful interview that she felt unnoticed in her marriage. She frequently sat by herself at home, waiting for the man she would marry, while Bishop Morton dedicated his time and energy to the church and its members. He was there for everyone else, but not for me, she stated. I required a companion. Instead, I got a pastor. Just that line conveyed a terrible tale. Every significant event in their lives had to go via him, she stated. He had power over every decision, no matter how major or minor. She believed that her views were unimportant. She wasn't on par with him. She was merely a person who lived in his shadow. Here's the startling bit though. Emotions weren't the only factor. And there was another thing, something that caused her to doubt the basis of their connection itself. According to her, Bishop Morton once made a significant financial choice without consulting her. Trust was more important than money alone, she replied. How? How can you build a life with someone who doesn't include you in decisions that affect both of you? This was not a minor error. Their family's financial security was nearly ruined by it. She claimed she could no longer bear the burden after being silent about it for years. Social media went crazy. As soon as this interview was released, people were unsure of how to respond. A few were stunned. A few were devastated. Others felt enraged. Some claimed that she was damaging her husband's reputation and that she should never have come up. However, she was lauded by many others. They referred to her as courageous. Her voice was long overdue, they murmured. Finally, the truth is out, they declared. There were more than two characters in this tale. It grew into something more. Many others who were subtly having interpersonal problems found it to be a mirror. The waves of response continued to build in the days following Dr. Deborah Morton's interview. They actually got stronger. After years of following the Mortons, people began to view them in a different light. Some people were perplexed. How could a man with such a high spiritual status struggle so deeply at home? However, things start to become interesting at this point. Personal suffering wasn't the only theme of the novel. It was about the pressure to maintain a flawless public persona when private affairs were in turmoil. Dr. Morton described the unspoken regulations that come with being a public figure's wife. She was unable to express her suffering. She was unable to request assistance. Everyone expected me to look strong, to smile, to always be by his side, she added. But I was collapsing inside. She stayed for more than herself. She stayed because of the church, because of its reputation, and because she was afraid of what people would think if they found out. That terror turned into a jail, and eventually, it caused her to lose sight of her true self. The most absurd thing is that she was unable to go even when she wanted to. She acknowledged that there were times when she considered leaving. Something always drew her back, even when the emotional distance got too great and the quiet at home was louder than any sermon she had ever heard. Sometimes it was terror alone, and other times it was guilt or faith. However, destiny took a surprising turn. As she grew older, she came to the realization that she would never speak again if she didn't now, and perhaps, just possibly, it was time for her truth to be heard. Bishop Morton ultimately responded to her revelations in front of his church rather than in a news release or post. He acknowledged his errors while standing in the same pulpit from which he had delivered sermons for years. His words, "I am not a perfect man. The person I love the most has been harmed by me." His voice broke. While some people remained silent, others started crying. Were those words enough? Was the actual query, though. He begged for pardon. However, forgiveness without action is merely a statement. Many replied, "It's too late," but many others thought his apology was genuine. Why now? Why just after she raised her voice? There was a glaring split at this point. Some supported him by arguing that he deserved grace, that pastors are also people, and that errors occur in all marriages. Others agreed with her, stating that no one should endure suffering for the sake of one's reputation and that silence is not strength. The narrative was striking not only because of what transpired, but also because it sparked a more in-depth discussion on the true workings of spiritual houses. This was more than simply a disagreement. I assure you, it turned into a wake-up call. People started talking about their personal struggles and tales. For the first time in years, the image of a flawless marriage in the public eye was no longer untouchable because to Dr. Morton's bravery, which gave others a voice, the fissures were clearly visible under the spotlight. Many people thought the situation would settle down after Bishop Morton's public apologies. However, it was not the case. Actually, things became even more difficult. You see, it wasn't just one woman who stood up for what she believed. It was about a community realizing something that they had been ignoring for too long. Hard questions began to be asked. Could someone who stood for truth, love, and unity have permitted his own household to suffer in silence? What did Bishop Morton's failure in his own home mean for the sermons he spoke every Sunday? It becomes intriguing at this point. Members of the church who had been quiet for years also started to speak up. Some claimed to have occasionally observed the couple's coldness, but they dismissed it. Others claimed to have seen signs, but they were afraid to question the man they thought knew everything. The issue with elevating individuals to a pedestal is that you no longer consider them to be human. However, this incident served as a reminder to everyone that beneath the title, the suits, and the sermons, there was a man, a husband who had erred, and a wife who had concealed her suffering for decades. The most bizarre aspect, however, was what Dr. Morton said in a subsequent discussion. She disclosed that she had previously attempted to raise her voice. She had turned to dependable individuals in their social circle in the hopes that someone would pay attention and offer assistance. However, rather than offering assistance, she was instructed to keep quiet for the benefit of the ministry. They said, "Protect the church. Don't make your hubby look bad." For years, she heeded that instruction, but in her heart, that quiet became more significant than any external criticism. That's what broke folks the most. I'll tell you. Recognizing that women are frequently told to suffer in silence in influential religious settings, Dr. Morton no longer told her story alone. For many women who had been marginalized, silenced, and rendered invisible in the name of duty and faith, it turned into a mirror. Are we protecting leaders, or are we protecting the truth? Was a question this narrative made people consider as they examined the church's leadership structure. To his credit, Bishop Morton stayed put in the face of the flames. He was still there. He went on to preach. He even answered enquiries from members of the congregation. He reiterated his desire to improve as a husband and a guy. However, the harm had already been done to many. Whether he acknowledged his errors was no longer the question. The question was if he could actually change. And would it be sufficient to restore the lost trust if he changed? The most poignant twist, though, is this. Dr. Morton claimed that she still loved him in spite of everything. She had no intention of ruining him. "I just wanted my truth to be heard," she added. "I wanted to quit acting. Peace was what I desired." Because it reminded everyone that this was not about retaliation, it struck a different chord. It has to do with release. Blame wasn't the issue. It was about becoming free at last. One thing became evident as the dust began to settle. It was more than just a scandal. This was a turning point for everyone in the audience, not just the Mortons. For years, People had followed their path, but now they had a new perspective. The narrative shifted from public image to personal truth in this way. A decades-long silence had been broken by Dr. Deborah Morton. She made people examine the hidden flaws in what they believed to be a flawless foundation by doing this. Here's the startling bit though. The Mortons decided to remain rather than leave or split up. They remained together. They didn't disappear. They kept strolling alongside each other, not wearing the mask this time. Bishop Morton continued to lead the church, but his tone had changed to one that was gentler and more vulnerable. Surprisingly, he attracted even more attention after he stopped trying to be viewed as flawless. People didn't want a perfect leader. It turns out, they desired a genuine one. What is unique about this story? It's how suffering didn't turn into devastation. Honesty resulted. It resulted in painful, gradual, and public healing. The church wasn't the only one shaken by Dr. Morton's reality. It sparked discussions in prayer groups, living rooms, and even online between couples. People started to wonder if they were being truthful in their own relationships. Have I also lost my voice? For those who had been suffering in silence, her bravery served as a lifeline. However, fate took a surprising turn. Rather than crumbling under the strain of the scandal, their marriage took a step forward and became something genuine. Bishop Morton started going to therapy. In a change from his usual practice, he invited visiting pastors to speak. He even asked Dr. Morton to address the crowd directly as a woman who had experienced something that most people couldn't comprehend, rather than as his wife. The church became hushed as she spoke. It's out of respect, not shock. This time, they viewed her as an individual, not just the bishop's wife. Not everyone was prepared to forgive though, and perhaps that's all right. It takes longer for some wounds to heal. Disappointed, a few people left the church. The truth continued to inspire others. There was no happy ending to this tale. A fresh start, something more potent, marked its conclusion. What can we learn from all of this? Then, that fact is important. Silence isn't strength, even in ugly situations. That love is meaningless without respect. Above all, remember that it's never too late to speak up, change, or decide to put healing ahead of concealment. No sermon could possibly teach us what the Mortons did. That great testimony may be formed from even broken stories. It is now up to you to respond to the question, can love last once the mask is removed? Or does the uttered truth alter things irrevocably? Your voice counts, so please share your thoughts with us.